Hey everyone, welcome to my tutorial on how to draw hands. I have literally drawn at least 200 hands over the last 2 months, and I just want to share with you some of the things I've learned and done to improve. The first half of this video will be 2 techniques on how I practiced and improved, and then the second part will be about how I actually go about drawing a hand and my process with examples. So if you want to see how I went from this to this, keep watching. Out of all of the learning techniques out there that I've tried, there are 2 that I attribute to how I improved the fastest. For the first technique, instead of starting off drawing the entire hand, what I did and still do sometimes is something called chunking, which is basically a learning technique where you break up something into smaller parts, learn those smaller parts, and then put them together as a whole. So how I did this was I would practice drawing the shapes of each part of the hand separately. There's a lot of research done about this method and why it works, but essentially how I see it is that drawing individual parts is way less overwhelming than drawing it all at once, especially when you're just starting out. This also makes it easier to help you determine what parts you struggle with instead of drawing something and seeing it looks off but not knowing what to fix. The second technique that literally changed my life is called blind contour drawing. I read about it in the book Drawing on the Right Side of Your Brain by Betty Edwards, and it's essentially just training your brain to shut off the left critical side and tune into your right creative side. To do this, you'll pick a reference and draw it while not looking at what you're drawing, only at the reference, trying to observe every shape, line, and curve. I think the idea is that because the left side of your brain wants to look and make corrections, because you're not allowing yourself to do that, it gives up and your right artistic brain takes over. If you've never done this before, trust me, you are going to hate it, but just 15 minutes of this before you start helps your observational skills so much. And I know it's going to be hard, but remember to not look at what you're drawing until you're done. These are supposed to look ridiculous, but every time I do this warm-up, I find that my art turns out 10 times better because I'm in a mode of observation that I wasn't in before. Now let's move on to my process for actually drawing a hand. First, we need to get a reference. The 3 places I get references from are usually the Clip Studio Asset Store, ArtStation, or taking pictures of my own hands. In the Asset Store, you can download either poses with hand positions you want or pre-drawn hand templates. If you're making a webtoon, I find using the 3D models to be easiest because if you already have your character's body type saved, you can just drag whatever pose you download onto it. And the settings make it really easy to open and close fingers or position them however you want. I want to make a whole video on where I find references, but other than Pinterest, and if you have a couple dollars to spare, you can find tons of references on ArtStation. I got this free image pack of hands and I find this to be way more convenient for practicing rather than spending 30 minutes looking for different hand references, but it's really not necessary to spend any money. Now that we have our references, we can get started on putting everything together. First, import your picture into the canvas and position it next to where you will draw. Let's go over some general hand proportion rules first. When looking at the back of the hand, from the knuckles to the tip of the fingers and to the wrist is the same length. From the palm side, since the knuckles aren't visible, the entire palm is slightly longer than the fingers. From the knuckle to the tip of the finger can be divided in half. Lastly, the whole hand is about as big as the face lengthwise. To start, I basically take what I learned from my practice of splitting up the hand and combine it together. I begin by drawing marker lines at places that bend, so the wrist, knuckles, and this part that's called the phalange. The last markers I place at the end of the longest finger, or whatever the longest finger is depending on the angle, and then at the thumb. Drawing down these lines like this helps me determine the proportions and the length way easier. Block out the palm and start placing the fingers, keeping in mind how long each finger is and following the direction of your markers. Once I'm finished, I just refine it and add details such as nails, veins, bones, any lines, and then I finish up by coloring it, and that is about it. Here's another example. For this one, I am drawing the whole arm and the upper body. This is actually another form of chunking I use that helped me improve a lot and not get overwhelmed. After learning how to draw a hand, you move on to learning the arm, then the torso, and so on, connecting everything until you can draw the entire body. I follow the same rules I outlined before. Mark the wrists, the knuckles, and the tip of the longest finger. Then draw the shape of the palm, and then draw in the fingers following the direction of your markers. Here are some extra troubleshooting tips for when you draw and can't figure out why it looks off. Some of this won't apply to hands in different perspectives, so keep that in mind. First, check that all the fingers are the appropriate length. Second, check if looking at the back of the hand, knuckle to wrist and tip of the finger is the same length. Third, check that if looking at the palm of the hand, the palm is longer than the fingers. Fourth, is the base of the thumb to the tip of the index finger too long or short? Fifth, can you divide a finger from the knuckle to the tip in half evenly? And lastly, check how you draw fingernails because that could make or break this perspective you're going for. I hope this was helpful in any way, and if you have any questions, let me know. If you're a complete beginner, I recommend practicing the chunking method before moving on to the entire hand. But yeah, that's all. Thanks for watching.